The candles were still burning. I had just lit them. A small chocolate birthday cake from the bakery on Elm Street, the same one I bought myself every year, sitting on my kitchen counter at 9:17 in the morning. My phone buzzed. A notification from a legal document delivery service. I set the lighter down. I opened it. My husband had filed for divorce. On my birthday. I stood in my kitchen with the candles burning down into the frosting, and I read my own name at the top of a legal petition that described our marriage as irretrievably broken. And I felt something settle in my chest that was not quite grief and not quite surprise, and was something colder than both. Because here is what Kevin did not know. He did not know about the folder on my phone. The one I had been building for 14 months. The one that contained every message he had ever sent, archived, time-stamped, backed up every single night while he slept in the bed next to me. He had been planning this for 11 months. I had been ready for longer. Welcome back to BetrayalLedger Stories, where family secrets never stay buried for long. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and join the family, because this story is one of the wildest ones we've ever told. Let's get into it. My name is Ashley Donovan. I am 34 years old. And the morning my husband filed for divorce on my birthday, he had already hidden $430,000, opened 3 secret accounts, and built a legal strategy that would have worked perfectly if I had not saved every single message he ever sent me. Stay with me, because this one gets better with every paragraph. I need you to understand who Kevin was before I tell you what he did. Not to excuse him, but because this story only lands the way it should when you understand that the man who filed those papers on my birthday was the same man I had chosen, completely and without reservation, 7 years earlier. Kevin Donovan was 38 years old, a real estate developer in Nashville, Tennessee. The kind of man who walked into a room and immediately understood the spatial logic of it, who could look at a broken building and tell you what it wanted to become before anyone else had finished looking. He was smart in the outward-facing way, intelligence always pointed at a problem, never circling itself. I had loved that about him. His attention was always moving toward something. I did not yet know what that something was. We met when I was 27 at a charity auction in downtown Nashville. Standing near the back of the room during the bidding on a lot neither of us intended to bid on, arguing quietly about whether the auctioneer was manufacturing urgency. I said false urgency. He said genuine interest. The lot sold for 4 times its estimated value. He turned to me with the expression of someone who has just lost an argument they were enjoying and said, "You are right. Can I get you a drink?" I said yes to both. We married 4 years later in a garden in East Nashville, under a pergola covered in wisteria, with the city skyline turning gold behind us in the summer evening. Small ceremony. 30 people. Exactly what I had wanted. Kevin had planned most of it. I had found that romantic. I understand it differently now. The first 3 years were good. Genuinely good. We bought a Victorian in Germantown, restored it carefully, kept the bones, and improved the systems. I worked as an interior designer. He developed properties across Middle Tennessee. Our work was complementary in a way that meant we understood each other without competing, and that understanding was its own kind of intimacy. The second 3 years were different. Not dramatically. Not in a way I could point to and name. Just colder. Like a window left open somewhere in the house that you cannot locate. Just the undeniable fact of the temperature changing. Kevin worked more. He was present less. His attention was always partly somewhere else, directed at something he did not discuss, a calculation that lived in a part of his life he had quietly stopped sharing with me. I adjusted instead of confronting. I told myself it was the natural evolution of a long marriage. 2 people settling into parallel lives inside a shared one. I was wrong about that. But I did not know it yet. Stay with me, because this is where it starts. 14 months before my birthday, I was looking for a receipt in the office we shared. A room lined with bookshelves, a desk I had designed myself, wide enough for 2 people to work at simultaneously. We had done that in the early years. By then it was mostly mine. I opened the wrong folder. It was labeled with a number sequence I did not recognize. Inside were statements for a bank account I had never seen. Kevin's name only. The balance stopped me for a moment, larger than I expected, and the transaction history showed regular deposits on dates I recognized immediately. Closing dates. For projects I had believed we were both benefiting from. I put the folder back. I found my receipt. I submitted my expense. And then I sat at that desk and I made a decision I cannot fully explain except to say that my body made it before my brain caught up. I downloaded a message backup application. Set it to archive every thread, every night, automatically. Timestamps preserved. Metadata intact. I did not tell anyone. I did not change anything about how I behaved toward Kevin. I just started saving. I need you to hear this part carefully, because the next 14 months are what everything else depends on. Over those 14 months, I kept finding things. Not because I was searching obsessively. Because I was paying attention in a way I had not been paying attention before, and once you start paying attention that way, things that were always visible become impossible to unsee. A second statement. A third account. A business entity registered in Delaware that I found while researching something unrelated for a client project. My own husband's name listed as the registered agent of a company I had never heard of. Transfer records that moved money from our joint accounts into structures I could not access. I saved everything. Every document image. Every statement photograph. Every message. And the messages were where Kevin made his mistake. He had been communicating with his divorce attorney, a man named Frank Holloway who specialized in high-asset divorce litigation, for 11 months before he filed. 11 months of strategy discussions. 11 months of planning. Conducted on his primary phone, in text messages, apparently without considering that phones produce records and records can be saved by someone sleeping in the next room. In those messages, Frank and Kevin discussed the hidden accounts by name. They described the Delaware entity and its purpose. They outlined the transfer timeline. They talked about the asset picture they intended to present, one that did not reflect the actual marital estate, in language that was, as my attorney would later describe it in mediation, remarkably candid. In one message, sent on a Tuesday evening 4 months before my birthday, Kevin wrote, "By the time she figures out what she is actually entitled to, the structure will already be established and the negotiating position will be entirely ours." She was me. The structure was the concealment. And the negotiating position was the one he had spent 3 years building, 11 months planning, and which was about to evaporate completely. But I am getting ahead of myself. Stay with me. The morning the papers arrived, I called Patricia Walsh, my attorney. I had been given her name 8 months earlier by a colleague who had been through a difficult divorce and who had said, when recommending her, that Patricia was the attorney you wanted when the other side had been planning longer than you had. I had put her number in my phone the same day. I had not called it until the birthday morning. She answered on the second ring. I said the papers had arrived. She said, "I have been expecting your call. Come to my office this afternoon. Bring everything you have saved." I brought 14 months of archives. Patricia's associate, a precise and unhurried woman named Claire Briggs who handled digital evidence, spent 3 hours going through every file. When she finished, she put a printed summary on Patricia's desk. Patricia read it without her expression changing. Then she looked at me. She said, "He made a significant error." The mediation was 6 weeks later. A conference room in downtown Nashville, a gray November morning, the kind of day that has no weather strong enough to distract you from the room you are sitting in. Kevin arrived with Frank Holloway. They were prepared. They had the asset picture Kevin had constructed, the one that excluded the hidden accounts, the Delaware entity, the 3 years of transfers. Patricia put 14 months of archived messages on the table. 40 minutes in, Frank Holloway asked for a recess. He and Kevin were gone for 22 minutes. I sat in that conference room and I did not move. I looked at the Nashville skyline through the window, the same city that had looked like a photograph from the Wisteria Gardens 7 years earlier, and I thought about a man who understood spatial logic and had applied it to things other than buildings. He had constructed something. He had been very careful about it. He had filed on my birthday because he had calculated that emotional disruption would produce strategic disadvantage. He had not calculated 14 months of saved messages. When they came back, Kevin did not look at me. He looked at the table with the expression of someone whose calculation has just produced a result they cannot revise quickly enough. Frank Holloway's voice had lost the particular professional confidence it had carried when we started. The mediation took 2 more sessions. The final settlement reflected the actual marital estate. All 3 hidden accounts. The Delaware entity. 3 years of transfers that had been designed to be invisible and were not invisible anymore because I had been paying attention and because Patricia Walsh was very good at her job and because Kevin had sent those messages from his primary phone and apparently believed that the woman sleeping in the next room would never think to save them. I kept the house in Germantown. Not because I had fought specifically for it. Because the settlement was built on what was actually true, and what was actually true was fair. I want to be clear about something. I did not gloat in that conference room. There was no version of those sessions where gloating served any purpose I was interested in. I sat across from Kevin Donovan, and I let Patricia do the work, and I looked at the table, and I thought about a charity auction, and an argument about false urgency, and a man who said you were right, and can I get you a drink? I had been right then too. The urgency had always been false. The asset picture had been constructed. The birthday filing had been a tactic. All of it had been engineered by someone who was very good at making things look like what they were not. I was better at saving receipts. On my 35th birthday, I went back to the bakery on Elm Street. Same small chocolate cake. I did not buy candles this time. I sat at a table by the window, and I ate a piece with a coffee that was exactly the right temperature, and I looked at the street outside, and I thought about 14 months of nightly backups running silently on a phone while my husband slept. He had been right about one thing. By the time she figures out what she is actually entitled to, he had just been wrong about when. And wrong about what she would be holding in her hands when she did. I figured it out. I had the messages. I had Patricia Walsh. I had the settlement. I finished the cake. I left a good tip. I walked out onto Elm Street into the Nashville October, that warm Tennessee gold that makes everything look like it was always going to be okay. I had been paying attention the whole time. It turned out that was everything.